Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I'm yours, Alan Nathan, the militant moderate. Once again, this is the Oasis. For those who have an aversion to the left-right, black-white, two-dimensional approach, you are listening to the summaries of Barack Obama at the State of the Union address, expressing what he believes is the project that the American people want him and the legislators to work on, such as better opportunities, small business growth, what have you. We have assisted me in the opining department to give us a sense of what he thinks was accomplished by the president and how we may move from this point on. Old friend of the show, David Pakman, liberal host of the internationally syndicated radio and TV program, The David Pakman Show, heard in over 120 cities and towns on DirecTV and Dish Network and at davidpakman.com. David, good to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Overall, I thought the president's speech was pretty good. I have to admit, I thought there was some compromise in there. He seemed to be comparatively far less ideologically anchored than he was in the previous 2 years. What's your sense of how this speech might translate into anything along the lines of real legislative change?
Probably not going to see real legislative change. I actually thought that the first 4 minutes of the speech, which were almost to the second explicitly about bipartisanship, were really well written, but completely indicative that Obama is in somewhat of a fantasy land still. The first 2 years of his presidency, we heard so much about bipartisanship, and it just didn't work. I can't think of anything that the Republicans helped Democrats pass, and actually they almost derailed the few things that did go through, including the Obama health insurance plan. So I don't know how much change I really see.
Well, bipartisanship has got to mean more than just the other side coming to your side. So if we acknowledge that, would we really want to think of the examples you gave as part and parcel of why, bipartisanship is necessarily bad?
No, not necessarily, but what was clear to me was that Republicans were literally, I hate to use this term, but it's such a good way of summing it up, literally the party of no, with the exception of Bush tax cuts for the rich, which fortunately Barack Obama said we didn't need, but that's certainly not how he acted when he extended them for 2 years.
Well, the paradox is if we work within the paradigm that tax cuts equal an increase in deficit, which I don't believe. It momentarily does, but I think in the long run it actually generates more tax revenue than it takes away. But if we just accept that premise upon which the president and your party, his party, predicates most of their assessments.
Well, I'm an independent, so don't wrap me up with the Democratic Party. I am a liberal independent.
Liberal independent? Okay, fine, we'll leave it there. You are a liberal independent. But still, nonetheless, the logic that he holds is that tax cuts equal an increase in deficit. I don't believe that. I might have even mentioned this to you on a previous show. We have to remember John F. Kennedy famously once said that it was a paradoxical truth that when you lower tax rates, you actually increase tax revenues because you allow businesses to have that many more dollars to hire that many more people who then in turn pay that many more dollars in tax revenue. The logic is better to have a lower rate for the many than a higher rate for the few. But even if we accept... I just said this real fast. Go ahead. I apologize. You go.
We've had this discussion. You're right, and without rehashing the merits of it, and just so you know, I think that violent rhetoric trickles down much more than tax cuts for the rich. From the point of view of the State of the Union, my point is that I heard Barack Obama say some things that either he can't possibly believe or he knows aren't true. That doesn't mean I didn't find positive things in the speech either.
So you would agree that when you lower tax rates, you increase tax revenue?
No, I wouldn't.
That's what it sounded like.
No. What I'm saying, though, is that I found there were things that Obama said which I didn't agree with. Like, for example, when he says we don't need tax cuts for the richest Americans or we don't need oil subsidies, I agree with those things, but I just don't think that the last 2 years prove he believes them.
Well, I completely agree with him on corporate welfare. There's no way on earth we should have oil companies be getting dollars from the government for doing that which they know how to do quite well, thank you very much. Just as I don't like it when the far left demonize the oil companies and mischaracterize how much of their assistance our economy is going to need in the not-too-far-distant future, I also take umbrage at the belief that these corporations have the right for corporate welfare. But getting back to the other paradigm, if we just momentarily accept the president's premise that, in fact, you have to realize that by cutting taxes you're increasing the debt, letting the upper 2% get spanked, but not having it happen to the middle class still would have resulted in billions and billions of dollars of additional deficit. I mean, the upper 2% only involved something like $70 billion that would have been given up by the government, whereas the middle class tax cut continuing constituted $300 to $400 billion. So the idea that we're having such harmful times can be attributed to 2% versus the larger percent seems a little dizzying. Its logic, does it not?
Well, there's a couple issues, and I don't know how much into picking apart the actual tax for the rich versus the speech we want to get into. But we also what you left out conveniently for your argument in that analysis is that we have to look at what percentage of each dollar saved by people in different income brackets is actually going to be recycled back into the economy versus put in saved or used in some other way. So it's not just a matter of looking at individual dollars, and also let's look at dollars per person, because giving a bunch of money back to a small amount of people versus giving much more money back but spread out over many more, it's going to all have a very different recycle rate into the economy.
Yeah, but if the people who create jobs are given a chance to hold on to their money, won't that dynamic, once fully realized, equal more tax revenue because it in fact leads to more people on payrolls who then have money to pay taxes?
No, I reject that completely. I've spoken to business owners who earn anywhere from as little as $50,000 up to millions. They have all told me that they do not hire people because they get a tax break. They hire people because of demand, and if you don't give the people who are buying their products a tax break, there's not going to be demand. Along that logic, if we look at the health care bill, I actually think taking the responsibility of health care and putting it in a public option or national health care will actually drive hiring, because employers now no longer have to think about, well, on top of the salary, I've got to cover part of their health insurance too.
Well, you saw what happened in Congress this week. You had a tonnage of small business owners testifying on Capitol Hill, stipulating that they seem to be more incentivized not to provide health care under the new health care reform bill than the opposite, because the penalty they would have to pay for not providing health care to their workers is actually a smaller amount than what they would have to lay out to provide health care.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. That is the one aspect of the Massachusetts plan, the free care plan, that I don't like, when the penalty is less than what the cost is for the health care.
All right, folks, stick with us. More with David Pakman. You are with Battle Line, Main Street Radio Network. I'm Alan Nathan.